Today is Crown Prince Murong Yan's 25th birthday banquet, and all the civil and military officials of the court, along with the imperial clan and honored nobles, are gathered together. As Crown Princess Shen Qingqi, I sat upright by his side, my elaborate ceremonial dress feeling like a gorgeous shackle, so heavy it was hard to breathe. Consort Wen Rushuang came walking over gracefully, holding a wine cup. Her misty rose-colored soft silk skirt accentuated her willow-like figure, making her look charmingly delicate. "Elder sister," she began in a soft voice, her eyes shimmering. "Your younger sister would like to toast you. I wish you and His Highness many long years together." My expression was calm, and I didn't rise, only giving a slight nod. "You are thoughtful, younger sister." The instant she got close, her wrist gave a nearly imperceptible tremble, and the entire cup of wine spilled onto the hem of my skirt. Immediately after, as if pushed by an invisible force, she let out a cry of alarm and fell backward, the wine cup in her hand shattering into pieces. "Please make sure you are in a comfortable position. The main story is about to start now. In the comments, let us know which city you are all reading our story from." The entire hall was in an uproar. Wen Rushuang's personal maid shrieked and lunged forward to help her up. Wen Rushuang lay on the ground, her thin shoulders trembling slightly as tears rolled down. "Don't blame elder sister. I was the one who carelessly bumped into her." She raised her tear-filled eyes and looked at me, aggrieved. "Elder sister just didn't want to bother with me, that is all." That was very cleverly said. It both got her completely off the hook and implied that I was using my status as the primary consort to deliberately make things difficult. All eyes focused on me, some probing, some gloating, and even more were coldly scrutinizing. The coldest gaze of all came from my husband sitting beside me, the current crown prince, Murong Yan. He didn't even ask for a single reason, but abruptly stood up, walked to Wen Rushuang's side, carefully helped her up, and gathered her into his embrace. That gesture held a cherishing and tenderness I had never seen before. "Are you hurt?" he asked softly, his voice full of heartache. Wen Rushuang shook her head in his arms, crying like a pear blossom in the rain. "Your Highness, it is all my fault. Please don't blame sister. Sister is just upset. What is bothering her?" Murong Yan's voice suddenly turned cold. He supported Wen Rushuang and turned to look at me. Those eyes I once thought held stars now held only bone-chilling coldness and disgust. "Shen Qingxi, as the crown princess, you are so jealous and can't stand anyone else. Rushuang respected you, yet you humiliated her like this in front of the entire court." I sat upright, my back ramrod straight, coldly looking at that white lotus in his arms. "Did your Highness personally see me push her? Do I still need to see it with my own eyes?" Murong Yan laughed out of extreme anger. "Rushuang has such a gentle and weak disposition. If you hadn't spoken coldly to her and made her heart tremble with fear, how could she have lost her footing? What a baseless accusation." I looked at him and suddenly found it a bit laughable. For 3 years as husband and wife, I managed the Eastern Palace for him, maneuvered between the various factions for him, and covered up those unpresentable mistakes for him. I thought that even if there was no love, there should at least be some respect and trust. Turns out there was nothing at all. In his heart, my importance as the crown princess wasn't worth a single teardrop from Wen Rushuang. "Your Highness," Wen Rushuang, still in his arms, was coaxing him understandingly. "Let it go. Today is your happy occasion. Don't let me ruin the mood." Elder sister didn't mean it either. The more she said this, the more Murong Yan's anger flared. He felt that I was making his beloved woman suffer an injustice. He slowly swept his gaze over the deathly silent guests, his voice as if tempered with frost. "Today, I will let everyone see who truly calls the shots in this Eastern Palace. You will make you understand what hierarchy is and what rules are." He paused, squeezing out each word from between his teeth. "Guards, bring the branding iron. Number. Chapter 2, Phoenix Treasure Casket." These 3 words exploded like a clap of thunder in the great hall, and everyone gasped. The punishment of branding that was a cruel punishment used only on slaves and serious criminals. I snapped my head up, staring deadly at him. There wasn't a trace of hesitation on Murong Yan's face, only a morbid pleasure born from having everything under control. You are in a position of honor, yet you don't know your place, he declared condescendingly. In that case, I will brand the character slave on your face, send you to the Shinjaku, and have you properly learn what the rules are. Shinjaku, the filthiest and most lowly place in the imperial palace, the place where criminal slaves are kept. He wants to destroy my face, then throw me into the mire, to make it so I can never rise again for all eternity. In his arms, Wen Rushuang seemingly covered her mouth in terror, but deep within her teary eyes, a trace of unconcealable smugness and glee flickered. The branding iron was quickly fetched, burned red-hot in the charcoal basin, making a sizzling sound. A scorching smell of rust filled the air. 2 eunuchs walked towards me, one on the left and one on the right, with a bit of pity in their eyes, but more so fear. They dared not defy the crown prince's order. I watched that branding iron, which reeked of destruction, get closer and closer. It was reflected in my pupils, like a ball of hellfire. The scorching heat wave washed over my face, almost setting my eyebrows on fire. My heart completely died in that moment. Married to him for 3 years, I fulfilled my duty as the crown princess, fulfilled my duty as a wife, and also fulfilled the charge the late emperor gave me before his death. I thought he was just temporarily blinded, that he would eventually come to his senses. Turns out he wasn't just unclear, he just didn't love me, and even hated me. He hated me for occupying the position of crown princess, hated that my family background was more prominent than Wen Rushuang's, and hated that the late emperor looked upon me with favor. So he is going to use the cruelest, most humiliating way to crush everything I have. Murong Yan, you have such a cruel heart. The attendant's hand had already grabbed my shoulder, the force so great it was about to crush my bones. Another person held up a branding iron aimed at my cheek. Just as the branding iron was only an inch from my cheek, I suddenly spoke. My voice wasn't loud, but it clearly spread throughout the entire hall, calm without a single ripple. Stop. There was no fear in my voice, no pleading, only a kind of unquestionable calm that made the 2 eunuchs preparing to act suddenly freeze. Murong Yen frowned, clearly very unsatisfied with my reaction. He had expected me to be crying profusely and begging on my knees for mercy, not as calm as an outsider like I am now. Shen Qingxi, what other tricks are you planning? He said coldly. At this point, who do you think can save you? I ignored him, simply turning my gaze towards the personal maidservant who had been standing behind me the whole time. Qiyu, I called out. Go fetch the Phoenix treasure box Father Emperor bestowed on me. Qiyu froze for a moment, then nodded, heavily turned, and quickly left. Everyone looked at each other, not understanding why. The Phoenix treasure casket that was bestowed by the late emperor in the year of my hairpin ceremony, along with the title of crown princess. The casket is carved from a single piece of South Sea agarwood. The phoenix's eyes on it are 2 huge eastern pearls, incomparably precious. The late emperor once said, "To see this casket is to see him in person." For 3 years I have always kept it enshrined in my bedchambers and have never used it. A trace of doubt and impatience flashed in Murong Yan's eyes. What can a broken box do? Shen Qingxi. Stop delaying time, execute me immediately. What is your highness's hurry? I slowly raised my eyes to meet his ferocious gaze, the corners of my mouth even curling into a barely visible arc. Didn't your highness want to teach me the rules? I just feel that if I am to learn the rules, then I should be taught by Father Emperor's rules. After all, this land of the great Shah, the rules of this entire court, were all set by Father Emperor. I deliberately emphasized the words, Father Emperor, like a needle stabbing fiercely into Murong Yan's heart. He dreaded and envied the late emperor the most in his life. The late emperor was brilliant and strategic, while he was mediocre in talent, a fact known clearly by everyone in court and out. My words left him pale with anger and embarrassment, yet he couldn't retort. In a dynasty where filial piety reigns supreme, invoking the late emperor is like bringing forth an unshakable mountain. Soon Qiyu returned quickly, holding an ancient yet luxurious Seton wood box. The moment it appeared, it drew everyone's attention. It emitted a faint scent of sandalwood, and the phoenix carving on the box was so lifelike as if it would spread its wings and soar at any moment. I was held up by 2 eunuchs and couldn't get up. "Let me go," I ordered coolly. The 2 eunuchs looked at Murong Yan. Seeing that he hadn't spoken, they dared not move. "What?" I chuckled, my gaze sweeping over them. "Do you think the Crown Prince's order is greater than the late Emperor's decree?" The words struck them like thunder, startling the 2 eunuchs. They instinctively let go of me. I stood up slowly, smoothing the sleeves that had been creased by their grasp, my movements calm and elegant, as if the person who had just been pressed to the ground and nearly disfigured wasn't me. I walked up to Kyuyue and personally took the heavy phoenix treasure box. The cool touch of the wood from my fingertips made my chaotic thoughts completely settle down. "Father Emperor, your daughter is unfilial today. I must use the last safeguard you left behind." Cradling the treasure box, I walked back to the center of the grand hall, step by step. My high-heeled palace shoes stepped on the golden bricks, smooth as a mirror, making a crisp da-da sound, with each step feeling like it was landing on everyone's heartbeat. Murong Yan stared hard at me, or rather at the box in my hands. His eyes were filled with shock, suspicion, and a kind of provoked anger. He didn't know what was in the box, but he instinctively sensed a danger that was spiraling out of control. Wen Rushuang also peeked her head out from his embrace, her teary eyes staring straight at me, filled with unconcealable venom and confusion. She couldn't figure out how, at this point, I could possibly turn the tables. I walked to the very center of the grand hall, and under everyone's gaze, slowly placed the phoenix treasure box on the floor. Then I bent my knees and knelt down. This kneel was not for Murong Yan, but towards the empty dragon throne at the head of the hall, the symbol of imperial power, as I performed a standard grand ceremony of 3 kneelings and 9 kowtows. Unfilial daughter Shen Qingxi kowtows before Father Emperor. My voice was cold and resolute, echoing in the silent grand hall, thick with the heavy tension of an impending storm. The ceremony concluded, I slowly rose, my expression solemn. The guests filling the hall didn't dare to breathe, all eyes anxiously fixed on the phoenix treasure casket in front of me, guessing what on earth I was going to do. Murong Yan's patience had clearly run out. He roared, "Shen Qingxi, what kind of mystery are you trying to create? Do you think invoking the Emperor's name will let you escape punishment today? I am telling you, it is useless." I acted as if I hadn't heard his roar, just extending my slender fingers to gently stroke the phoenix wings on the treasure box. That cold touch made me even more clear-headed. Then, in full view of everyone, I pressed the eastern pearl in the phoenix's eye. I only heard a soft click, and the treasure box popped open. Everyone subconsciously craned their necks, wanting to get a clear look at what was inside. They imagined that inside was perhaps the death exemption gold plaque bestowed by the late emperor, or some priceless token. However, in the box there was no gold, silver, or jewels, no cinnabar book and iron pledge, only a scroll neatly wrapped in bright yellow brocade, lying quietly on the dark red velvet. That color is the symbol of imperial power. Murong Yan's pupils suddenly contracted, and the color drained from his face. He could no longer maintain his composure, and cried out involuntarily, "What is that?" I didn't answer him. I extended both hands and reverently held out that scroll. Following my movement, the bright yellow brocade slowly unfurled. Revealing its true form within it was an imperial edict. Number, Chapter 3. The late Emperor's Secret Edict, an Imperial Edict. Simone in the crowd let out a cry of shock, and the entire grand hall instantly fell into a dead silence. So quiet you could hear a pin drop. Everyone was stunned by the scene before them. No one had expected that the coming-of-age gift the former emperor bestowed upon the crown princess would turn out to be a secret, unissued imperial decree. Wen Rushuang's face drained of color, even more shocked. She tightly grabbed Murong Yan's sleeve, her body trembling uncontrollably. She had a premonition that things had completely slipped out of her control. Holding the imperial edict high with both hands, I gazed directly at the pale-faced Murong Yan on the throne. My voice clear and resonant, each word like a heavy hammer blow, striking hard on everyone's heart. This is the late emperor's secret decree, hidden within the phoenix treasure box, personally kept by me. The late emperor has decreed, unless absolutely necessary, it shall not be opened. I paused, my gaze slowly sweeping over the clan nobles and dignitaries who had once looked down on me with cold eyes, finally settling back on Murongyan's face, a cold sneer curving my lips. And today, it is when there is truly no other recourse. Murongyan stumbled back a step, as if my words had drained him of all strength. He pointed at me, his lips trembling, but unable to utter a single word. He knew the late emperor had held me in high regard, treating me like his own daughter. But he never expected the late emperor would leave me such a contingency. What does this mean? It means the late emperor had harbored a sense of wariness towards his own son from beginning to end, and I, Shen Qingqi, was the most crucial piece he placed by his side. This realization made him feel more humiliated and enraged than any insult. Fake. This must be fake, he roared, as if clutching at the last straw. How could Father Emperor leave you a secret edict? You have some nerve, daring to forge an imperial decree. Forge. I gave a cold laugh and slowly unfurled the imperial decree in my hand. On the imperial yellow brocade, the characters written in vermilion imperial brush were vigorous and powerful, each stroke exuding the majesty of an emperor. And at the end of the decree, the vermilion seal of the imperial jade seal was clearly affixed. The seal of the imperial jade. No one in the world dares to forge it, Your Highness, the Crown Prince. I held the imperial edict high for all to see clearly. Are you trying to say that the great seal of the heirloom seal of the realm was also forged by me? Murongyan's roar came to an abrupt halt. He stared fixedly at that glaring seal, and the last trace of color also vanished from his face. Inside the great hall, some court officials could no longer hold back and knelt down. Long live my emperor, long live, long live. 1, 2, 3. In the blink of an eye, a whole mass of the guests in the hall knelt down. No matter what they were thinking in their hearts, they had to kneel before the late emperor's imperial edict. Only 3 people were still standing. One was me, holding the imperial edict, having become the center of the entire hall. Another was Murongyan. He was frozen on the spot, neither kneeling nor standing, his expression ugly to the extreme. And another one was the Prince Regent Xiao Hanyuan, who sat in a corner and hadn't uttered a single word from beginning to end, just holding his wine cup and watching coldly from the sidelines. He was Murongyan's imperial uncle, and also the late emperor's most trusted younger brother. At this moment, he put down his wine cup, and a pair of bottomlessly deep eyes were quietly watching me, his gaze holding a hint of probing and approval. I met his gaze, gave a slight nod, then cleared my throat, preparing to read out the secret edict that could overturn the entire Eastern Palace, and even the entire political situation of the great Xia court. Murongyan, didn't you want to teach me the rules? Today, I will use my father emperor's imperial edict to properly teach you what the real rules are. By the grace of heaven, the emperor proclaims. My voice echoed in the grand hall, clear and steady, carrying an unquestionable majesty. The crowd kneeling on the ground even quieted their breathing, afraid of missing a single word. Murongyan's face was ashen, his body swaying as if about to collapse. Wen Rushuang had long been so scared she collapsed limply to the ground, shivering uncontrollably. I unrolled the imperial edict, my gaze sweeping over the familiar handwriting, a myriad of feelings welling up in my heart. Father Emperor, you were so far-sighted. Did you foresee today's situation long ago? I took a deep breath and read aloud in a clear voice. Crown Princess Shen Qingqi, the legitimate daughter of Grand Tutor Shen Wenyuan, possesses both virtue and talent, and has a gentle and virtuous character. We have observed that she has the talent to assist a monarch and is worthy of being a model for the mother of the nation. We hereby specially bestow upon her the authority to supervise the state. She need not kneel when seeing the sovereign. She may participate in discussions of state affairs, and all officials shall assist her. Boom! As soon as these words were spoken, it was like a sudden clap of thunder on a clear day, and the entire grand hall exploded into an uproar. To not have to kneel before the sovereign, to participate in state affairs, what an immense honor, what immense power. This was almost equivalent to being half a sovereign. With this act, the late emperor wasn't marrying off a crown princess at all. He was clearly establishing a regent to supervise the state for the crown prince. The officials kneeling on the ground exchanged glances, shock written all over their faces. They finally understood why the late emperor regarded this crown princess so highly. Murongyan was even more struck as if by lightning. He suddenly looked up. His eyes filled with bloodshot veins and roared, "No, impossible, Father Emperor. How could he give you such great power? How could he distrust me, his own son, so much?" I paid no attention to his breakdown and continued to read on in a steady tone. And the next sentence was the one truly prepared for myself. The crown prince and the crown princess. Theirs is a marriage personally decreed by us. We hope they will be as harmonious as zithers and rule the world together. However, the family affairs of the imperial house are also matters of the state. If affection exists, then they are a good couple. If affection is lost, it cannot be forced. My gaze went past the imperial edict, looking straight at Murongyan, as I enunciated word by word the most crucial sentence. If the crown princess and the crown prince's affection for each other is severed, she may, by this edict, initiate a divorce on her own. The imperial family, relatives, and all officials, both inside and outside the court, must not defy this. So decreed, divorce on her own. These 4 words were like a red-hot sharp sword, ruthlessly piercing through Murongyan's last shred of dignity. Wasn't he trying to humiliate me? Wasn't he trying to brand slave on my face? But the late emperor gave me the right to shake him off any time and leave the entire imperial family speechless. I am the one who truly holds the initiative in this relationship. Murongyan muttered to himself, his gaze unfocused, obviously completely crushed by this series of blows. I slowly rolled up the imperial edict, placed it back into the phoenix treasure casket, and then closed the lid throughout the entire process. My movements were steady and calm. After doing all this, I then raised my head and calmly looked at the man I had once admired, and for whom I had devoted 3 years. On his face there was now only shock, humiliation, and disbelief. "Your Highness, the Crown Prince." I spoke, my voice devoid of any warmth. Even my address had become a distant honorific. "Father Emperor's rules, did you understand them clearly?" He opened his mouth. Sound coming from his throat, but he couldn't get a single word out. I no longer looked at him, but instead surveyed the entire scene. My gaze lingered for a moment on the face of the Prince Regent. Xiao Hanyuan, he was still sitting there. His expression unchanged, only the look in his eyes as he watched me held a bit more profound meaning. Finally, my gaze fell back upon Murongyan, as if I were making the most ordinary of farewells. "I, your consort, Shen Qingxi, hereby sever all ties with Crown Prince Murongyan today." I paused slightly, then clearly spoke the words I had already rehearsed countless times in my heart. "Once we part, may we both be after speaking." I hugged the phoenix treasure box, not even giving him another glance, nor looking at Wen Rushuang on the floor, who was crying her guts out. I straightened my back, took a step, and walked towards the entrance of the main hall. No one dared to stop me. Behind me was a deathly silence. I could feel countless gazes stuck to my back shock, awe, confusion. I could also feel Murongyan's gaze, which was filled with regret and madness, and almost burned a hole through me. But so what? From the moment he ordered someone to bring the branding iron, it was already over between us. I walked step by step, firm and resolute. Each step was like saying goodbye to my past naive and foolish self. When I stepped over the threshold of the main hall, the afternoon sun shone on me, so warm it made one want to cry. I took a deep breath of the fresh air outside the palace, feeling as if the heavy shackles that had bound me for 3 years were finally smashed to pieces by my own hands in that moment. From the main hall behind me came the loud crash of shattering porcelain, and Murongyan's irrepressible trapped beast-like roar. I didn't look back. From now on, the vast sea is for the fish to leap, and the high sky for the birds to fly. Murongyan, your eastern palace, your title as crown princess, whoever wants them can take them. And my life, Shen Qingxi's life, is only just beginning from today. Number. Chapter 4. Seeking refuge with the regent Tuyue quickly caught up with me. her face still showing lingering panic and a hint of relief after narrowly escaping disaster. "Miss, where are we going now?" "Back to the Grand Tutor's manor." I shook my head, my footsteps not pausing in the slightest. Returning to my maiden home, that would be my most foolish choice. Although my father is the Grand Tutor, with his students and old acquaintances all over the court and the country, he holds no military power in his hands. At this moment, I, holding the regency power granted by the late emperor's secret edict, am like a 3-year-old child walking through a bustling market carrying a priceless treasure. Murong lost a tremendous amount of face today, and with his vengeful nature, he will absolutely not let this go. He doesn't dare make a move against me openly, but his underhanded tricks will be endless. If I return to the Grand Tutor's residence, not only will I drag the entire family into danger, but I will also put myself on the defensive. I am not trying to escape, I am going on the offensive. "We're not going to the Grand Tutor's residence," I ordered in a deep voice. "Get the carriage ready. We're going to the Regent Prince's residence, or Gent's estate." Qiuye was greatly surprised, almost stumbling. Everyone in the court knew that Regent Xiao Hanyuan and Crown Prince Murong had always been at odds. When the late emperor was alive, he often said, "Hanyuan has the bearing of a nation's stabilizer." His admiration for this younger brother was evident, even at one point making court officials think that the position of crown prince was meant for someone else. And precisely because of this, Murong was filled with apprehension and hostility towards this imperial uncle. Right now, if I were to seek refuge with him, it would be tantamount to directly declaring that I have completely broken ties with Murong and chosen to stand on his opposing side. "Miss, isn't this just pouring oil on the fire?" Qiuye asked worriedly. "If His Highness the Crown Prince finds out, he'll be even more furious. He is already furious beyond measure. What difference does it make if it is a little more or less?" I sneered, a sharp glint flashing in my eyes. "Qiuye, you must remember, I am no longer Shen Qingxi, who had to live by the Crown Prince's moods. What I hold in my hand is the power bestowed by the late emperor, a weapon to counterbalance him. But this weapon needs a strong enough wielder to unleash its greatest potential." I stopped and turned back to look at my loyal maid patiently explaining. The current court situation, while seemingly overseen by the Crown Prince, is actually divided into 3 forces. First, Crown Prince Murong who holds the moral high ground but has shallow roots and is impulsive and easily angered. Second, the civil official faction led by my father, who are loyal to the late emperor and adhere to rules, but act in a moderate way, lacking assertiveness. Third, the regent, Xiao Hanyuan. He controls the capital's military power, has immense prestige among the troops, acts decisively and ruthlessly, and is Murong most powerful opponent. However, his identity as an imperial uncle makes his position illegitimate, and he is constantly constrained by the crown prince. I looked at Qiuye and said word for word, "Do you understand? He has the sword, and I have the right to wield it. We are natural allies." Qiuye listened, dumbfounded. She had never imagined that her lady, after experiencing such humiliation and shock, not only hadn't collapsed but could, in such a short time, analyze the court situation so thoroughly. She looked at me, and in her eyes, besides loyalty, there was also a deep sense of awe. In front of the regent's mansion, the vermilion gate stood solemn and majestic. I handed over my visiting card, and without waiting long, the mansion's main gate slowly opened. This was the etiquette for receiving the most distinguished guests. The steward personally welcomed me into the mansion, leading me all the way to the study. Inside the study, sandalwood incense curled upwards. Xiao Hanyuan had changed out of his court attire and was wearing a dark casual robe. He had lost some of the sharpness from court and gained a scholar's elegance. He stood by the window, holding a cup of clear tea, as if he had expected my arrival. "Miss Shen, please sit." He turned around and gestured for me to sit down. The address had changed from Crown Princess to Miss Shen. This was a clever man. He had immediately acknowledged the legality of my self-initiated divorce. "Thank you, Your Highness." I didn't stand on ceremony and sat on the chair opposite him, placing the Phoenix treasure box gently on the table beside me. He personally poured me a cup of tea. The tea's fragrance was crisp and clear, refreshing the mind and spirit. I thought you would go back to the Grand Tutor's mansion first. Do you think I am the kind of person who would make such a pointless move? I picked up my teacup, blew gently on the foam, and asked back nonchalantly. Hearing this, a flicker of appreciative amusement flashed in Xiao Hanyuan's eyes. The smile was faint, but it brought his whole being to life. Indeed, you don't seem like it. Miss Shen's performance in the hall today opened my eyes. He didn't say impressed, but eye-opening, this word was used with extreme precision. He had seen too many storms. Although my actions were unexpected, they still weren't enough to impress him. You flatter me, Your Highness. I put down my teacup and got straight to the point. I didn't come here today to listen to Your Highness's praises, but to discuss a deal with Your Highness. Oh? He raised an eyebrow, seemingly interested. Let's hear it. Crown Prince Mirongyan is narrow-minded and vengeful. Today I made him lose all his face. He will definitely not let this go. I calmly stated the facts. Although I have the late Emperor's secret edict in hand, I am, after all, just a woman with no power and no soldiers. If he uses some underhanded methods, it will be impossible for me to defend myself. So, you want to seek my protection? He looked at me, his gaze sharp, as if wanting to see right through me. I met his gaze without flinching. I didn't come to seek asylum. I came to form an alliance with Your Highness. I stated my terms clearly, word by word. I will use the regency power bestowed by the late Emperor to help Your Highness justifiably suppress the Crown Prince in the imperial court and implement new policies. And you, Your Highness, must use the power in your hands to help me do one thing. Xiao Hanyuan's lips curved up slightly, revealing a playful smile. What is it? Help me thoroughly investigate the accounts of the Wen clan. A trace of bone-chilling coldness flashed in my eyes. If Wen Rushuang dared to scheme against me like this at the birthday banquet, it would be absolutely impossible without the support of her family behind her. And the Wen family is merely a vine clinging to the big tree that is Mirongyan. What I want has never been just a divorce. What I want is to cut the grass and eliminate the roots. Xiao Hanyuan looked at me, but didn't answer immediately. The air in the study seemed to have frozen. Only the curling sandalwood incense was silently. He was a natural-born ruler, well-versed in the art of checks and balances, and would never easily reveal his trump cards. Miss Shen's proposal is indeed very tempting, he finally spoke. His voice low and magnetic, the power to oversee the state, rightful and justifiable. This is indeed what this king needs most right now. But his tone shifted. He leaned slightly forward, and an invisible sense of pressure washed over me. Why should this king believe you? Why should I believe that a little girl like you could, in this treacherous and unpredictable imperial court, properly control this power that is enough to upend the world, instead of becoming a pawn in someone else's hands, or causing even bigger trouble? This was an expected question. It was only natural that he didn't trust me. I wasn't flustered in the slightest, and instead smiled faintly. I understand Your Highness's concerns, so I've brought my sincerity. I didn't go to touch that phoenix treasure box, but instead extended 2 fingers, dipped them in a bit of tea on the coffee table, and then gently drew a few lines. Your Highness, please look. I pointed to the simple water stain lines, my voice calm and clear. This is the border defense map of Daxia bordering the northern barbarians. The Crown Prince advocates for a direct assault, believing the enemy tribes are barbarians, not to be feared, whereas Your Highness advocates for a firm defense, a steady advance. The court has been endlessly debating this. Xiao Hanyuan's gaze slightly tightened. He hadn't expected me to directly discuss matters of state and military affairs. I continued to say, the reason the Crown Prince is so eager to start a war is 1. To establish his military prestige and consolidate his position as the Crown Prince. 2. To move the capital garrison troops under you, Your Highness, away from the capital city, weakening your power. But he has overlooked the most important point: logistics. My finger pointed to one of the lines. Transporting provisions from the capital to the northern border. The route is 800 li long and passes through 3 natural barriers along the way. And this year, the autumn rain has been continuous. The water level of the Wei River section has surged. Once war breaks out, the provisions will surely be blocked. What is more, I raised my head, looked straight into Xiao Hanyuan's deep eyes, and slowly revealed my trump card. As far as I know, Your Highness, General Chen, the commander under you in charge of guarding the Waishui ferry, his only son got into a brawl in the capital half a month ago and injured side consort, Wen's biological brother. This matter was suppressed by the Crown Prince, and General Chen is still being kept in the dark to this day. Tell me, Your Highness, if the Crown Prince were to use General Chen's son to threaten him, ordering him to bungle a military opportunity at a critical moment, would your northern defense line still be impregnable? After I finished speaking, the entire study fell completely silent. The trace of a playful smile on Xiao Hanyuan's face had completely disappeared, replaced by a deep, scrutinizing gaze. He stared fixedly at me, as if trying to see a flower bloom on my face. The matter of General Chen was extremely secret. He was an important chess piece he had planted in the army to stabilize morale. Even his most trusted adjutant might not have known the full inside story. And yet I, a woman who has long resided deep within the palace, was able to expose it with a single sentence. This was no longer just simple sincerity. It was an ability that was enough to frighten him. After a long while, he finally spoke slowly, his voice carrying a barely perceptible hoarseness. How did you know? Your Highness doesn't need to know how I know. I withdrew my hand, picked up the already slightly cool tea, and took a gentle sip. Your Highness only needs to know that I, Shen Qingxi, am not a woman who can only vie for favor and be jealous in the inner quarters. My father is the Grand Tutor. Since I was young, I have followed him and read extensively, dabbling in both historical annals and the art of war. These 3 years in the Eastern Palace, I haven't just been idling my time away either. I looked at him, my gaze firm and sincere. What I want isn't to be dependent on anyone. What I want is to get back the justice I deserve with my own hands, and then live the life I want to live. Forming an alliance with Your Highness is the fastest way for me to achieve this goal. And for you, Your Highness, having an ally like me is a much better deal than having a foolish enemy. Ha ha ha. Xiao Hanyuan suddenly burst into a hearty laugh. His laughter was frank and robust, dispelling all the solemnity in the study. He stood up, walked over to me, and personally refilled my hot tea. Miss Shen, you've won. He looked at me, his eyes filled with undisguised admiration. I agree to ally with you. From this day on, you are my most honored guest. You can come and go as you please in this manner, and I will be responsible for your safety. He paused, then added, as for the Wen family, I will have my secret guards fully cooperate with you. You can investigate however you wish. The great stone weighing on my heart finally fell. I stood up and gave him a slight curtsy. Thank you, Your Highness. Qingxi will definitely not fail to meet Your Highness's expectations. No need for such formalities. He made a gesture to help me up. You and I are allies. There is no need for these empty formalities. He arranged for me the quietest and most secluded courtyard in the prince's residence, Tingshui Pavilion. The furnishings inside the pavilion were elegant, and it had everything one could need, even a bit more comfortable than my sleeping chambers in the Eastern Palace. After we settled in, Chuya clutched her chest in belated fear. Miss, you scared me to death just now, directly discussing top-secret military matters with the Prince Regent. What if he won't? I sat by the window looking at the tall parasol tree in the courtyard, my gaze calm. A true powerhouse will always appreciate the value of another powerhouse. If I had just cried and begged him for protection, he might have taken me in out of a sense of moral duty, but he would never have truly valued me. Only by showing him my usefulness can our alliance be unbreakable. Chuya nodded, seeming to only half understand. I gazed out the window, already starting to plot my next move in my mind. Murong Yan, Wen Rushuang, did you think you'd won just by kicking me out of the Eastern Palace? No, that wasn't the end. That was just the beginning of the war, and the first battle will be fought in the Imperial Court tomorrow. Number. Chapter 5. Storm in the Imperial Court the next day. At Maoshi, in the Golden Throne Hall, the hundreds of officials stood in solemn silence. As I, dressed in the first-rank official's attire, holding the Phoenix treasure box, appeared at the entrance of the Grand Hall, all the hushed whispers instantly ceased. Civil and military officials simultaneously turned their heads, their gazes complexly fixed on me, the uninvited guest. The commotion at the Crown Prince's birthday banquet yesterday had already spread throughout the capital. Everyone knew the Crown Princess, holding the late Emperor's secret decree, had divorced the Crown Prince publicly. But no one had expected that I would actually appear today in the Golden Palace Hall, which represents the supreme power of Dacia. Murong sat on the regent's throne, sleeplessness leaving him with heavy dark circles under his eyes, his face so grim, it looked like water could drip from it. When he saw me, his bloodshot eyes instantly ignited with fierce rage. Shen Qingqi! He slammed the table and stood up, completely disregarding his imperial demeanor. Who permitted you to trespass into the Golden Palace Hall? This is a place for discussing state affairs, not for women to set foot in. Guards, escort her out for me. The guards at the front of the hall moved at his command, but just as they were about to step forward, a steady voice rang out. Your Highness the Crown Prince, please calm yourself. Regent King Xiao Hanyuan slowly walked out from the ranks, gave Murong a slight bow. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried an unquestionable power. The late Emperor's secret edict states very clearly, Miss Shen has the right to participate in state affairs. Letting her enter the court to discuss politics is in accordance with the late Emperor's final edict, and in accordance with the rules. The moment he spoke, the guards who were originally itching to move immediately stopped in their tracks. Murong trembled with anger, pointing at Xiao Hanyuan and roaring, Imperial uncle, are you also going to protect this number? And oppose me? I wouldn't dare. Xiao Hanyuan's expression didn't change as he said lightly, I am merely upholding the late Emperor's rules. If Your Highness the Crown Prince feels the late Emperor's rules are wrong, you are more than welcome to present your reasoning to all the officials. These words directly shut Murong mouth, questioning the late Emperor. That was a crime he could not bear. He could only watch helplessly as I, under the gazes of all the officials, walked step by step to the center of the Grand Hall. According to the privilege from the late Emperor's final edict, to see the sovereign without kneeling, I simply gave a slight curtsy towards the throne. Shen Qingxi greets Your Highness the Crown Prince. This calm greeting was undoubtedly a huge mockery to Murong ears. He flicked his sleeves in anger, sat back down heavily, and said through gritted teeth, Good, very good. I'd like to see what state affairs a mere woman like you can discuss. I ignored his provocation and instead turned to the court officials, saying in a clear voice, My lords, today I have come to court for just one matter. From my sleeve, I took out a memorial I had prepared long ago and presented it with both hands. This is the Ministry of Revenue's military grain accounts from past years. Last night, having nothing better to do, I gave it a brief look and found a few expenditures within to be quite suspicious. I would like to ask the Minister of Revenue, Lord Wen, to resolve my confusion. The Minister of Revenue, Wen Chengji, was none other than Wen Rushuang's biological father and one of the Crown Prince's staunchest supporters. Upon hearing this, he stepped out from the ranks, a hint of an arrogant sneer on his face. You must be joking, Miss Shen. The Ministry of Revenue's accounts are incredibly complex. How could an outsider possibly understand them in a single night? I am afraid you have misread them, miss. Is that so? I smiled faintly, opening the memorial. Then please, Lord Wen, listen. In the third year of the Yong'an era, the imperial court allocated 100,000 dan of military grain to the northern border. It is written clearly on the dispatch records. But after this shipment of grain reached the northern border, the receiving records only show 80,000 dan. The 20,000 dan of grain in between vanished without a trace. Dare I ask, Lord Wen, did this 20,000 dan of grain grow wings and fly away? Or was it pocketed by some fat rats? The moment these words were spoken, the entire court was stunned. Military grain is the lifeblood of the nation, and embezzling it is a heinous crime punishable by the extermination of one's 9 relations. Wen Chengji's face instantly turned deathly pale. He tried to compose himself and said, Nonsense. Losses during transport are common. A mere 20,000 shi, hardly worth mentioning. Hardly worth mentioning. My voice turned cold abruptly, my gaze sharp as a knife. Our great Xia soldiers are fighting bloody battles at the border, defending our home and country. Every grain of rice they eat is stained with their blood and sweat. In Lord Wen's eyes, do they deserve to fight on empty stomachs? Or is it that Lord Wen knows exactly where these 20,000 shy of grain went, but dares not speak of it? I pressed him step by step. As far as I know, Lord Wen just purchased a villa south of the city last month for 30,000 taels of silver. I wonder where this money came from. You are slandering me, Wen Chengji, sweating profusely, pointed at me, enraged. Just then, Xiao Hanyuan spoke again, his voice chilling. Your Highness the Crown Prince. This minister believes Miss Shen's words are not baseless. Embezzling military grain concerns the foundation of the nation and must be thoroughly investigated. I second that. We second that. My father, Grand Tutor Shen Wenyuan, and several old officials behind him also stepped forward immediately. They might not agree with my breaking ties with the Crown Prince, but in matters of great right and wrong, they were never ambiguous. In the blink of an eye, voices seconding the motion rose one after another. Murong Yan sat on the throne, watching the scene before him, his face livid. He knew this was me, together with Xiao Hanyuan. Number him. Wen Chengji was his man, so investigating Wen Chengji was a slap in his face. But what could he do? I held the evidence. Xiao Hanyuan seized the opportunity to make his move, and the old ministers in the court all chimed in. If he forcibly protected Wen Chengji, he would be making an enemy of the entire imperial court. Permission granted. He practically forced those two words out through clenched teeth, then gave a sharp flick of his dragon sleeve and angrily shouted, "Court dismissed." Watching his sorry figure as he departed, I slowly, silently let out a breath. I knew that this first battle I had won. Knocking on the mountain to frighten the tiger. The mountain I am knocking on isn't just the Wen family, but even more so, this self-righteous, fierce tiger, Murong Yan. I am letting him understand, and letting all the officials of the court understand. I, Shen Qingxi, am back, not as the crown princess, but as a chess player holding a sharp sword. This game of chess has only just begun. Murong Yan's outwardly stern but inwardly timid court dismissed was like the flustered curtain call of a farce. I stood in the center of the golden throne hall, holding the memorial from the Ministry of Revenue about the accounts, and did not leave with everyone else. Xiao Hanyuan walked to my side and said in a low voice, "When Chengji is finished, next, the crown prince will counterattack like a mad dog." I know. I looked in the direction of the dragon throne, my gaze icy cold. What I want is for him to fall into disarray on his own. The task of investigating Wen Chengji naturally fell into the hands of the regent and me. With the help of Xiao Hanyuan's secret guards, and the clues I had secretly collected in the Eastern Palace for these 3 years, evidence of the Wen family's corruption was dug up like snowflakes. Within 3 days, the evidence for Wen Chengji's crimes of embezzling military rations, selling official posts and titles, and colluding with local wealthy merchants to forcibly seize commoners' farmland was substantiated one by one, with both witness testimony and material evidence complete. The evidence was ironclad, and Murong Yan couldn't protect him even if he wanted to. The Wen family had their home raided and were imprisoned. The entire family was convicted. Their family assets were confiscated. The male members were exiled 3,000 li, and the female members were sent into the Jiaofangxi. When the news reached the Eastern Palace, it is said that Wen Rushuang fainted on the spot. After waking up, she rushed to Murong Yan like a madwoman, crying and making a scene, questioning him why he didn't save the Wen family. And Murong Yan was already in a terrible state over this case. He didn't expect my counterattack to be so fast, so ruthless. The Wen family was his important money bag. Now that it has been completely dismantled, it is like cutting off one of his arms. More importantly, officials in the court who supported him all felt threatened, fearing they would be the next ones investigated. In his rage and frustration, he laid a hand on Wen Rushuang for the first time, viciously slapping her and cursing, "You useless idiot who only screws things up." The two people, once so sweet and affectionate, finally revealed their most selfish and ugliest faces in the face of the collapse of power and interests. Wen Rushuang was confined to the Eastern Palace. Soon, word spread from the palace that because she missed her family and had lost favor, She spent her days washing her face with tears, her mind in a trance, and finally on a rainy night, she lost her footing and fell into the cold Taya pond, her life and beauty fading away. I knew this was just a dirty trick used by Mirong Yan to protect his own reputation. To Mirong Yan, a woman who had lost her family's support and angered him was already completely worthless. The downfall of the Wen family was just the first step of my revenge. Using my power to advise on state affairs, I joined forces with Xiao Hanyuan and began a drastic overhaul of the bureaucracy in the imperial court. The faction of civil officials led by my father, seeing that my actions were all for the country and the people and not for personal revenge, also switched from their initial wait and see attitude to full support. As one side waned, the other waxed. Mirong Yan's influence was eaten away step by step. The power in his hands was gradually stripped away, and he became a puppet crown prince in every sense of the word. He hated me to the bone, but there was nothing he could do. He sent assassins after me several times, but the guards of the regent's manor were impregnable, and none of those assassins ever returned. He also once tried to use my father and my family to threaten me, but I had long ago asked Xiao Hanyuan to send heavy troops to secretly protect the Grand Tutor's residence, leaving him with no way to strike. He was like a wild beast trapped in a cage, watching helplessly as I stripped away and crushed everything he was once proud of, bit by bit. Finally, on the day before his 26th birthday, his last bit of patience ran out. He took a desperate risk, colluding with some of the generals of the palace's imperial guard, attempting to stage a coup, force Xiao Hanyuan to hand over military power, and then have me sentenced to death. However, all of this was long within Xiao Hanyuan's expectations. That night, the imperial palace, which had been shaken by the sounds of killing, soon returned to peace. Mirong Yan's rebellion was nothing more than a pathetic joke. At daybreak, Xiao Hanyuan and I walked side by side into the eastern palace, which was shrouded in the stench of blood. Mirong Yan, looking utterly wretched, was held down on the ground. His once proud head was now slumped low, and there was no longer a shred of spirit in his eyes, only a dead silence. He raised his head and saw me. "Shen Qingxi," he murmured, his voice hoarse. "You won." I looked down on him, my expression calm and undisturbed. "I never wanted to compete with you over winning or losing. It was you who pushed me to this point, step by step." He suddenly burst into a maniacal laugh, filled with regret and unwillingness to concede. "Yes, it was me. If I had trusted you back then, if I hadn't been deceived by Wen Rushuang, would we not have come to this point today? There are no ifs." I cut him off coldly. "From the moment you ordered someone to fetch the branding iron, the only thing left between us is a sworn blood feud." I no longer looked at him, but turned towards Xiao Hanyuan. 3 days later, the deposed Crown Prince Mirong Yan's crime of rebellion was established. He was granted a cup of poisoned wine and committed suicide in the Eastern Palace. All of his partisans were purged together. The sky over the Great Xia was finally thoroughly clear. I fulfilled my promise to the late emperor, and also won justice for myself. I took that imperial edict that changed my life, along with the Phoenix treasure casket, enshrined them together in the imperial ancestral temple, and completely renounced that overwhelming power. On an early spring afternoon, I changed into some simple, elegant, casual clothes, and with Kyuya, quietly left the regent prince's mansion. Xiao Hanyuan stood at the mansion's entrance to see me off. He looked at me, his deep eyes surging with emotion. "Do you really have to go? This capital city, this world, has a place for you." I shook my head and smiled. That was the first genuine smile from my heart after the divorce, a relieved one.